IT, and HR. Professors here are highly specialized and are amongst the best faculties of the nation. Some of them have been chosen amongst the top 2% scientists in their field by Stanford. We have featured in various rankings and have been amongst the top 10 B schools. We have ranked first for the parameters of research and professional practice by NIRF. We are also amongst the only 5 Indian B schools in Shanghai rankings. We are ranked 10th nationally by QS World University Rankings and also are AACSB accredited. We don't settle here and are constantly trying to better ourselves, for which we maintain a faculty-student ratio of about 1:3, which is amongst the best in the country. We have also revamped semester system to a more comprehensive 8-term system. These are some of our esteemed alumni who have achieved great heights in a relatively shorter span of time. We have alumni working at executive positions at firms like Google, Barclays, and Goldman Sachs. We have hosted over 85 lectures. These are some of the prominent guests who have hosted at the department in the past time. To give a bird's eye view of the demographics, these are the demographics for the senior batch. The key thing to notice is the shorter batch size to maintain quality students. The batch size is 69 with varying levels of work experience with an average work ex of 27 months. The few certifications that our senior batch has are Lean Six Sigma, CFA, and CFI. The batch consists of people with varied educational backgrounds, consisting of various engineering streams, as well as healthy mix of non-engineers. Moving on to our batch size is 74 with varying levels of work experience with an average work ex of 28 months. The few certifications that we have are Lean Six Sigma and CFA. Our batch 2 consists of people with varied educational backgrounds, consisting of various engineering streams, as well as healthy mix of non-engineers. Thank you. Now,
thanks, Aman. Very impressive, I must say.
Thank you, sir. Now,
and,
we should move on to...
The only thing I can tell you is, why are you people hiding behind all these things? You need to be far more visible in the industry.
Yes, sir. We have made some progress in that turf, and we are hoping to progress more further.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, wonderful.
Yes, sir. With your permission, can we move on to formal introduction, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. It brings me immense pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Sarthak Raychaudhuri on the behalf of the Department of Management Studies, IIT Roorkee. Currently, he is the founder of Aaroha Consulting, wherein he is driving growth in organizations while promoting the human spirit. He is focused on organization and individuals' purpose-led transformation. He is supporting leaders to drive cultural change to overcome business challenges. Prior to Aaroha, he has been associated with the various organizations such as Whirlpool Corporation, Aditya Birla Group, Ranbaxy Laboratories, Tata Motors, etc. in various capacities. He is a trained and accomplished coach and has facilitated numerous leadership and career transitions. He has more than 2 decades of experience in running the HR function in India and abroad. He is a firm believer in human-centric transformation. He supports organizations to define and deploy their people agenda. He has a deep understanding of Asian and Oceania market and has driven change initiatives across the globe. It is no less than a privilege to have him amongst us today. I'm sure the students of DOMS IIT Roorkee would certainly learn immensely from this guest talk. Stating that, I would request Sarthak sir to please take over.
Yeah, thank you, Aman. Let me try and share the presentation.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, the entire purpose of this is not so much to talk of stuff. I think as students, what you will gain more is through discussions. And let's use this opportunity. I've got a few slides. I would like to talk for about half the time, 30 minutes, And let's have 30 minutes of discussion on this topic. And may I say, if you want to talk about anything else, if I can help you in any other ways, personal journeys, other challenges, anything that is on top of your mind, please make use of this opportunity of the 60 minutes. And I will be absolutely open to have candid conversations with you. Let's make use of the 60 minutes as much as possible.
Yes, sir.
We talked about the VUCA world. I would like to expand it a little bit. And before we talk about VUCA world, let's look at what's actually happening around us. And what are the big changes that are happening around us for the last few years, which will go on. And there are 5 areas which we are looking about, which is really what we call mega trends or mega changes. Technology obviously is a big change. And when we talk about technology, the biggest thing that is happening is, businesses are moving and seeing technology from being an enabler to be a driver. Now, what do I mean by this? There used to be a time technology used to help us do our work better. So, if I go back a couple of decades when Excel and Microsoft came in, Excel was helped us to calculate things better. PowerPoint helped us to make our presentations better. And then there were a lot of computational things that happened through technology. So technology was helping businesses do better. Now things have changed. Technology has actually developed so fast. We are now right now molding our business model to take advantage of technology. So the business is following technology. And that is a big shift that is happening in the entire world of business, where technology from being a support function or being an enabler is becoming a driver. And that has implications on things as we talk about later. Demographic changes, of course, is happening. There are multi-generational workforce that is there in the business right now. And with every multi-generational workforce, the challenge, and I have experienced it myself, how do you deal with organizations like standardization? So they want one policy, one process, one kind of compensation packages, etc. But they are multi-generation workforce, their needs are different. How do I cater to the different needs of different people, yet maintaining standardization? And that's being a big challenge that organizations are facing right now. For example, as we go, senior people in the organization, they prefer to have high medical insurance covered. But youngsters, when you join in, you rather have more money in your hand rather than spend money on insurance covers, etc. So these are just a few examples of things that creates a lot of challenges in the organization. Longevity, things are changing. People's health is improving, longevity is higher, people are far more fitter nowadays. So this word retirement is becoming an oxymoron because nobody really retires. And you will see even in India, once after formal retirement, everybody continues to do some kind of work or the other. I used to travel to US very frequently, and there used to be people who are 75 years old, they are still working and working well. Incidentally, that country does not have a retirement age. For the purpose of any benefits, anybody who attains 55 can choose to retire to get all retirement benefits, but there is no age for organizations. India is a little different because we have a large population. We need to create jobs for others. Job is scarce. So the entire demand supply of in the labor market is skewed towards more supply. And that's why retirement is a way of creating jobs for younger people. But over a period of time, while they may be formally retired, you will see a lot of people post 60 who are still active in the industry. And it has impacts on work because the pool remains the same and there are more people now in it. Employee drivers, there used to be a time where people used to look at jobs for security. And that's why government jobs were really sought after. PSU jobs were really sought after because job security was very. Then from security, people started moving towards money. They wanted to go for high-paying jobs, 6-figure, 7-figure job salaries, etc. Even in campuses, people who used to pay high, didn't matter what industry they were in. People used to flock towards them for money. And I have gone through that kind of experience myself, both as a recruiter and as when I was a student like you. Things are changing and people are now seeking happiness. It's not only money, they are actually seeking happiness. And I don't want to get into the sociological factors. The root of this is, at least in this country, earlier generation had a lot of scarcity. So they grew up in a scarcity mindset. The current people are more moving through an abundance mindset. So that's why the shift from security to money to happiness. A lot of societal changes that is happening. Society is becoming individualistic. Relationships are far more virtual these days. So the amount of time that you spend on social media, I'm sure is more than the amount of time you spend with each other face to face. So people are becoming individualistic. And through this, which I will talk a little later in my next slide, there is a rise of what I call the white-collared contractual workforce. Whenever we talk about contractual workforce, we usually talk of blue-collared who come, do some work, on contract, go off. But the white-collared contractual workforce is increasing, and it is not out of compulsion, but out of choice. There are a lot of people who do not want to get into a full-time job. They are happy doing contractual work. They want to do what they enjoy, the seeking of happiness, and they are okay to work on contracts. And the entire gig economy is getting created because of this. So entire approach of society, the way it is no longer out into the society and say that this is what I am associated with. And my identity is linked to the identity of the company I'm working for. From there, people are more inward looking, more happiness. They are wanting to do what they want. And finally, for organization, there was a time business existed to make profit. And it was stated over and over again, the primary business of business is to make profits. But things are changing now. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about social responsibility. We are talking about a purpose-led organization. And many youngsters like you, I'm sure when you will choose your companies to work for, this will be a factor that what kind of socially responsible organization am I joining? Because you would rather go and tell your friends, family, etc., that I work for an organization which is completely green, has planned to reduce the carbon footprint by 40% over the next 5 years, than say I work for an organization which makes so much of profits. So the pride of working for an organization which is purpose-led is far higher than the pride of working with a much more profit. So these are some of the changes that is driving around. Now the technology piece that I talked about, I will delve a little deeper to understand what is causing this disruption. And I call this the democratization of resources. Now these looks like big words, but a very simple concept with a far-reaching consequence. Let me explain to you what that concept is. Now earlier, starting with the Industrial Revolution until recently, we had factories and offices, and they actually housed resources. Resources like machines, resources like computers, etc. And these resources or the tools were used to create value for the customer. And the workforce used to go to these venues, which is offices, factories, etc., to make use of these resources or these tools to create value. Because to create value, you need certain tools, you need resources. And these resources were housed in these factories or offices. Obviously, the resources were limited, so large organizations could afford to buy these resources and keep them together, and they were being used by people to create value. Now, what has happened is now, not so much the factory, but the entire service industry or the white collar people, the resources have been democratized. What do I mean by that? Now, resources no longer need to be housed in a central area. It is not like a library of resources. That's what offices were. They had all the resources. Now, resources have reached all these individuals who were the workers. So suddenly, the workforce has the resources in their hands. So they do not need to go to a central place to make use of them. Factories continue to work in the same thing because you cannot democratize the machines, etc. You still need them. So they continue to work. But other places, what has happened is resources have been distributed to all the people. And as a result, there is no need for anybody to go to a central place. Now, this has far reaching consequences. And the biggest consequence that has created is talent now does not need to go to work. The work can come to the talent. So you do not have to go to a place to do the work. The work can come to you wherever you are. And that has got very long lasting implications. And I don't know whether you realize the question of mobility doesn't come to fore at all, because if you are working in those areas, you can work from anywhere. And the last 18 months has been a good example of how this is actually happening. And I will talk a little bit, delve a little bit deeper into it in the next slide, in terms of the resources and what it does to the entire human capital management. So this is a big thing that is happening in the world, and organizations need to be very clear of how to handle these things. A good example of that. What is happening is earlier there used to be very clear job descriptions because things were standardized. This job required this computer, this resource, and you come and do this. Things are changing on their heads, and it is not job that is driving people, the entire organization, but it is individuals. So I am very good at creating UI UX for websites, and I will only do that, and I will do it for everybody. So you cannot create a job that or for which UI UX is just one part of it. It has to be a holistic. It used to be a holistic job, but now only part of that job goes to individuals, and the entire job description actually. So this we will delve a little deeper in terms of work going to talent. Workplace is also changing. In what ways? Whether you realize it or not, machines are already our co-workers. You're working with machines. They are actually co-workers. They're no longer tools. All repetitive tasks are conducted by machines. So many of them. And you are interacting with machines. Long back, the IVRs, the phone calls, it is actually a machine which you are interacting with. Like if you want to speak in English, press 1, Hindi ke liye 2 dabaiye. All those kind of things that is there. Machine is doing a lot of your work, telling you how much of standing bill is there, etc. And if you want to speak to a customer agent, press 9. So then the entire thing shifts to a human. So this entire call for an individual is being driven by machines and humans together. So machines have become your co-workers. And repeatedly, we are able to see this kind of things. There are so many chatbots these days. They are actually helping you, solving your problems. They are interacting with you. Entire this concept machine learning and artificial intelligence is actually giving rise to this. So for an HR manager who has to go talk to so many people, now part of the job is being done by chat boxes. And whenever the chat box tells you that, these are the 3 people I believe are extremely upset, why don't you go and talk to them? The HR manager comes in. So machines are actually helping you do some of the repetitive tasks, and they are already your co-workers, whether you like it or not. Next comes the concept of boundaryless organizations. In the previous chart, when I showed you that building, that was the organization. It had a boundary, and actually it had a boundary with security and all those kind of things. Right now, organizations are boundaryless. The social technology is driving different forms of value creation. For example, ideas can be sourced from anywhere nowadays. It doesn't need to be the idea doesn't need to be in your company at all. You're making a presentation. I seek out options from so many people. I said, I'm making a proposal for this kind of client. If any one of you has any understanding, please reach out. Take him. The entire crowdsourcing option of ideas, of funds, etc., is really creating a very boundaryless organization. So it will be a fatal mistake for any one of us to get restricted to an organization and its boundaries. And different companies are coming together. Competitors are collaborating together. So the entire world is becoming more and more boundaryless, and the collective intelligence can be tapped. Today, you can tap in resources anywhere in the world, and not necessarily only from your own friends or your own institute or your own organization. So the organizations are becoming. While this is happening, the world is shrinking. So this is the conundrum. Now organizations are expanding, and the world is shrinking. What do I mean by world is shrinking? Because we are becoming far more connected. This is a concept, the birth of new talent sources. Refer to my previous page, what we discussed, that how work can go to talent. Earlier, if I have to open up a software company, the chances are I will choose a Bangalore or a Hyderabad or maybe Pune, Noida, Chennai, etc., but mainly Bangalore, because the source of talent exists there. No longer. I can source talent from anywhere. Somebody is based out of Raipur, somebody is based out of any place, Madurai, somebody is based out of Nairobi, somebody is based out of Melbourne. Anywhere in the world, I can actually source my talent, because physical boundaries have got replaced with global connections. So that is a big change that is happening. And one of the reasons why you see so many new businesses flourishing is because the entry barrier of having everybody together, identifying one place, etc. The democratization of resources and the birth of new talent sources is allowing a lot of entrepreneurs to create new companies. And that is what is happening in the entire world. For large organizations, headquarter concept is disappearing because you don't need anything called a headquarters. Schneider Electric, I don't know whether you're aware of it. It's a French company. The CEO of that company sits in London. The head of marketing and head of human resources in Hong Kong, and head of supply chain is in Germany. So there are different people, and this is the leadership team of a global company. They are all dispersed. So they really do not have anything called headquarters. Yes, you need a registered office, which is there in Paris, but the concept of headquarters is fast disappearing. And this is something that old organizations have to start accepting. which also means that, I can actually start recruiting good people and not necessarily bring them to the headquarters and all those kind of stuff that we have of mobility. Those things are disappearing. We are creating a globally connected. And finally, on the work-life balance, this is something that you would have heard a lot of people talk about work-life balance. There's nothing called balance. Work and life needs to be integrated. There is no compartment, and they kind of mesh. And the last, again, 18 months, people have experienced it. People have adapted to it. That there's no compartmentalization. You are actually, doing some work in the kitchen, making your own coffee, and then coming and taking up a call, and then helping your child with your homework, and then you late night you again sit. So they are all interlinked. So there is no compartmentalization that is happening in the world. So work-life balance is a wrong word. Work-life integration is the new thing that one has to accept. Now, moving on, what does this mean for HR or human capital management? So if these are the changes that are happening around us, what's happening in the organization? Firstly, organization design. We used to have a time when there were very clear roles defined. Now, and we used to identify people who can do those roles. The thing is changing on its head because the rise of gig workers and the fact that the good talent is less in number, and organizations need talent more than these talent need organization. The entire organization design is going to get created. The roles are going to get created around people. It is not people who will join a role. Roles will get created around people. So I have very good skill in one area, and so I will continue to create a niche, and my role should only be in that area. So I'm very good at testing. So I am not going to get into development at all. I will just focus on testing. So organizations will be forced to create a role around me as a testing role, so that they get the best out of it. So those kind of things are happening, and of course, mundane roles will be taken over by technology, which is already happening. Career planning, unfortunately, we are almost seeing the death of career planning in organizations. There is this, what I have again telling you, the professional temporary workforce is getting created. So, if I were to, and you are the next generation, if I were to tell you that, if you stay with us over the next 20 years, you will do these things, rarely will it cut ice. I don't think that is what you're looking at. You are not looking at staying in an organization for 20 years. That's not what you're looking at. You are looking at exciting roles. So career planning has to take a different form right now. Career planning has to be a series of exciting roles that I can give to people, rather than a structured way of doing things. And organizations have to be ready and accept that as a reality. HR managers, including me, used to be really worried about attrition. Attrition will no longer be such a bad thing. As long as you are there, have you delivered value? If you have delivered value, well and good. Okay, and you will move on, which is perfectly fine. We do not want to keep people back just to keep our attrition down. The entire process is about delivering value. As long as you are there, deliver value, move on, fair enough, perfectly all right. So career planning is actually taking a backseat. Talent acquisition, employer brand. How do I attract talent? And I'm sure you will be able to relate to this. It's more purpose rather than profits. More than career, it's learning opportunities. Learning and growth opportunity, learning opportunity rather than growth opportunity. If I were to tell you, if you stay with us for 5 years, you will become a vice president or assistant vice president, etc. You will say, yeah, fine, that's good. But what will I do in this 5 years? What will I learn? What kind of jobs will I do? What are the technologies that you have? What are the new things you are doing? So learning opportunities become far more attractive than growth opportunities for people. It is not no longer about careers, it's about roles. So what will I do? Tell me that. And that's what people are actually looking for when they are choosing organization. And as a result, the talent acquisition team has to, recraft themselves to keep this. The training. Training used to be a place where, there was a trainer who was supposed to be the be all and end all, who understands everything and is the guru. He disseminates this knowledge. The training department is more a curator of knowledge rather than a disseminator of knowledge, because knowledge is now a commodity and there's enough available in the cyberspace. To the extent people are actually confused what to do, where to go. There are so many edtech companies, so many certificate courses. You look into there were, Harvard courses are coming up, this course, that course. There's so many available. So you need a training manager to help you navigate this, to help you identify and curate a package for yourself. The role of trainer is no longer about disseminating or telling you or giving you the knowledge. It is help you to curate the knowledge, identify what is good for you, what you need. And that is big change. Also, learning is happening in small packets. It's no longer, obviously, the instruction-led 2-day, 3-day training is definitely passive. Even certificate programs are becoming less attractive. Trainings are coming in small packets. And one of the biggest training tool right now is Twitter. You are moving from one place to another, you're waiting for the bus to arrive, you're looking at the Twitter and there's something that is there and you learn small little thing that you learn and you start thinking, wow, that's interesting. That's the interesting thought that this person has said. And then that allows you to go and do a little bit more research, a little bit more these things. So learning is coming in small package, self-driven, and obviously anywhere. So entire approach towards the training and learning is changing in the human resources professionals has to actually change their entire approach to this to bring about more effective training. Performance management is the other big thing. It's no longer an annual ritual that can be done. And it has to be a more continuous process here and now. And it is not because the manager also will be receiving feedback about this is my expectation. This is what I wanted you to do to enhance my performance. This is what you did, and this is where you fell short. This will be tough because what is also happening is hierarchies are actually disappearing, and as a result, all managers, etc., needs to accept these. So these are some of the trends that we see might be happening in the human resource area in terms of how do we handle people through different processes. And finally, I have one small slide on obviously what kind of a leader is required to deal with this kind of a VUCA world that is changing all around us. Technology obviously is going to be a big differentiator. So the person has to embrace technology. Without that, there is no chance for a leader to be successful in today's world if you are not a technology savvy person. The other big thing is, intelligence and not experience. There's a lot of leaders who have become good leaders based on experience. They have learned, they have failed, and when they are faced with any kind of challenge, they go back to their experience and see, oh, okay, this is what we had done that time, so let us do it this way. Now, that will not work. In the VUCA world, things are changing so often that things don't repeat itself. There are new challenges that we face. So experience will not really help. And firsthand, stories I can tell you, when the pandemic hit, lot of leaders were actually didn't know how to handle it. because this is the first time they experience something where you have to lead a team without meeting them, without facing them. It's a completely new kind of experience people had, and anybody who were focused more on their experience failed miserably, because you have to create, you have to navigate, you have to think on your feet, and it is your intelligence, both intellectual intelligence as well as emotional intelligence, that will help you to deal with that. So intelligence is very important for leadership nowadays, and you cannot only based on experience. And the next big thing is coming is socially intelligent. Now, what do I mean by socially intelligent? We are living in a world where the value of social capital is becoming very high. And what do I mean by social capital? I talked about boundaryless organization. So if there is no organization without boundary, what are we dealing with? We are dealing with the entire social capital. We are dealing with people who are our employees, our customers, potential employees, all these people. This is a huge sociological uh, boundary that in which we are actually working. And our ability to deal with such vast nature of people is going to be very important. So, you're no longer dealing with your customers face to face. You're dealing it through, Amazon ratings. You're dealing them through different review mechanisms that is there. So you're dealing with your employees through different social tools. And that is how your entire appraisal is happening. That is how the people are seeing you as an organization and as a leader. So ability to deal with this, ability to deal with a virtual world, drive virtual collaboration is actually extremely important in this world. So a leader has to deal with the virtually collaborative tools and collaborate virtual teams. And if we were saying there are different talent sources, people are working from anywhere, this becomes extremely. Fire starter, okay, a new term. Leaders were always thought as firefighters. Whenever there was a fire, the leader's role is to come and douse the fire, because we were talking about stability. Lack of fire is stability. But the world around is not about stability any longer. People around actually are getting more and more equipped to deal with the change. And the role of the leader is not really to guide and tell people what to do, but ignite thoughts in people, ignite a little bit of a passion in the people, and then manage that passion. That is what leaders are expected to do. So their role is to start the fire and not douse any fire. I need to ignite the fire, the passion in people, so that they actually start delivering. That's what the new leader expects. And obviously, if you have to do that, you have to give up control. So I had talked about lack of hierarchy in the past. Uh, Control-oriented leaders will find it very difficult to deal with VUCA, because with so much of things changing, you cannot control. And centralize things in a changing environment is very difficult. And that's why headquarters are disappearing. Anything that is centralized becomes slow. And in a VUCA world, you cannot afford to be slow. You have to take decisions very quickly. So decision making has to go down the level. And as a result, control becomes very difficult. You have to manage it within guidelines. You have to have governing principles, approaches, but you cannot control. The more you try to control, the more you will. And finally, we are reaching in a world which is very transparent. And in a transparent world, being authentic and humble becomes extremely important. And a new trait of a leader is to show vulnerability. We always used to think of a leader as a macho who has all the answers, who is never defeated, who is emotionally extremely strong, has all the answers. Those days are gone. We treat leaders more as human, with emotions, who have their vulnerability. And every time a leader shows vulnerability, I have experienced it myself, uh, the team rises up. Every time I've gone to my team and they said, guys, I'm completely confused. I don't know what to do. If you have ideas, let's spool in. And the best ideas have come out during that. Absolutely. And believe you me, nobody thinks of you any less if you show your vulnerability. In fact, you gain the respect of your team members if you show vulnerability, rather than trying to put up a facade all the time that I have. So the leadership, these are some of the leadership qualities that I is required in the world. And I know I've taken more time than what I would, but I would like to end with what Alvin Toffler had said, and this is so very true, that it is not about reading and writing, learning, unlearning, and relearning. And believe me, you are right now doing the learning. The toughest amongst this is to unlearn. It is extremely easy to learn. The most difficult thing is to unlearn. And then it's about relearning. And let me tell you one thing. My director of XRI, where I passed out, had told me this long back when I passed out, saying that, the piece of paper, which is actually the certificate that you're carrying with you, has a shelf life of 2 years. After that, you are on your own. Which just tells you that in 2 years, all the learnings will be old. And how you relearn during these next 2 years will tell you what you do in the next 3 years. And then subsequently it goes on. So learning doesn't end. And for learning to happen, a lot of unlearning needs to be done. And that, let me tell you, is one of the toughest things. So with that, I end the session. Any thoughts, any queries? I will be more than happy to take any questions that you might have.
The floor is open for Q&A. Please unmute yourselves and ask the questions.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
You talked about how traditional HCM will be impacted, like from organizational design, career planning, talent acquisition, training, and performance management perspective, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can also see that a lot of these processes are being automated and making these human touch become obsolete, sir. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. See, there are two parts. The automation of the entire HR processes is actually driving efficiency. Okay, that is what it is trying to do. That whatever people are trying to do, trying to make it efficient and removal of people from this entire process. And I know even in recruitment, there are bots who will do your initial level of screening, etc. So they are actually driving efficiency. That's what they are trying to do. But what I'm trying to say here is the very purpose of those processes will be under question. And I'm working with a few, very progressive new age companies, and they are actually questioning many of these kind of stuff. They are saying that, yeah, we need to do performance management system. Fine, we have to measure performance, but why do it all together? At the end of every project, I'll tell you what is it, what we need to do, and what has to happen. So the entire purpose of doing those processes is being questioned. Training functions are getting disbanded in organizations. That you do your own learning. It's all about self-learning. We will sponsor it. We will pay for you. Now, many organizations already have that. And when I talk to the employees, they are challenged that, okay, my boss has told me that choose a course, but I don't know, I'm confused. How do I choose a course? So who do I go to help me choose a course? There's so many of them. I get bombarded. So The role of training is to help you, identify and navigate you through this entire maze. And that's what is required. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you manage or lead a team in the work from home scenario wherein the monitoring thing is too difficult?
That's a real tough question. Let me tell you this. Okay, couple of stuff. First, you need to trust your people. Okay, that's the fundamental thing. Any leaders who wants to monitor performance will fail in a virtual world. Okay, you cannot all the time see whether the person is working, not working. You need to have the trust that the person will. First. Second, what do you monitor? You don't monitor all the processes or the steps. You monitor the results. So ability to identify key milestones for you becomes very important. So that's the second. Third piece is you need to have a lot of conversations with that individual, preferably with video on. In a video off situation, it becomes very difficult. And I understand there are a lot of people who are, their situation at home is not conducive for setting up video. So that's what the problem they face. Hopefully nowadays with a screen, background screen, etc., that is over the hill. But you need to have far more conversations with them. Fourthly, you need to be very sensitive to pick up whether the person is getting, is the person down or is the person feeling left out, etc., from the voice, etc. You need to be sensitive towards it. And these are new skills that a leader never had to focus on. Okay, all you had to do is put an arm around the person and things would have been much better. Now you have to learn these new skills. A lot of things what we other, at least I had done during the initial days of the pandemic is when you meet up with your entire team, don't start with work all the time. Do some informal chatting up also, because you need your emotional requirement, social requirement is there, and that is what is people are missing. Okay, and we used to have I looked at it very positively, when we were talking, etc. One of my my teammates little daughter comes in and sees, okay, what is papa doing and whom is he talking to. So the child also sits on the lap and we all talk to the child, etc. We get to know a little bit about the family of that person. So there is also an opportunity to get a peep into the person's home, into their personal life, within boundaries, whatever the person is comfortable with, and talk about things. And that is a way of breaking boundaries and getting to know people. Many a times when we see people at work, we see the person only through the role. We see, okay, he is manager accounts, so I deal with him as a manager accounts. But when I see him in his home with his children, with his, many people are taking their calls from the child's room, and there's a lot of dolls, etc., at the background. It makes you you may get to know the person much better. So the sensitivity of dealing with people and seeing that individual beyond just a role becomes extremely critical in a virtual world. And of course, we used to do a lot of social meeting, and there used to be evenings, when we used to all carry our coffee, our drinks, and order something and have chats or virtually, so that we are able to get some kind of linkage going. It is difficult, but I think we are learning to live with this new reality.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I had a question. Sir, you mentioned
Yeah.
that technology is revolutionizing workplaces wherein work is going to the talent. I mean, this has its numerous advantages in terms of cost savings and generating ideas and automation and technology. But I believe, don't you think that this concept of minimizing mobility is hampering the productivity in some or the other form? It's impacting the productivity. I mean, these golden ideas are always born out of those interactions, face-to-face interactions during meetings, physical meetings. So in some or the other manner, I mean, as we are also doing this MBA, so we also realize that, that online version cannot replace the offline format. So I just have a doubt that, don't you think this automation and technology is, having an adverse impact on?
Yeah. No, right, Sparsh. Every coin has two sides.
Right.
So what you gain on one side, you lose on the other, right? So the gain is like you can work from anywhere. Your cost goes down. It has impact on real estate prices in cities, etc. Pollution in city goes down. You don't need to travel in cars, etc.
Right.
Long distance, time saved, petrol saved, the carbon footprint reduced. All kind of advantages there. The flip side of it is lack of social interaction, and we are still a social animal, and I would love that humans continue to remain a social animal and not become individualistic. So that is a flip side, absolutely. So what organizations are doing is, they are doing in hybrid. So
Yeah.
the hybrid is 1 week every 2 months you need to be in office kind of a thing. Okay, and that is the time when you do interact with people, etc. And maybe not work. So work is less important. Social interaction is far more important at that point in time. It is a compromise. Let me also tell you on that. But there are certain jobs which may not require too much of interaction. They may work very well as a remote. But some amount of physical interaction is definitely important. So I think the water will find its own level, and there will be a hybrid process that will come up where we will be meeting often and not necessarily all the time. But yes, there are a lot of other questions that come up. How do you create a culture in the organization? Culture comes through interaction. Culture comes through dealing with people. So those are the other things that are coming up. So honest answer is we don't have all the answers right now. We are trying to figure it out, but we are seeing trends that is happening, and there are other means that are going to take over as a result of this.
I think with time, things will only get better in terms of technology and.
Yeah, we will also learn to adapt, and employees will learn to adapt, leaders will learn to adapt, and the new normal will come into force. Whenever there is a transition, these kind of things actually happen, and I've seen a few transitions happen. So we will get over it step by step.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sir, I had a question regarding leadership.
Yeah,
So,
Rishi.
so generally in smaller organizations, what we see is that employees do have the knowledge, but they don't have the spark to work. But as like we young graduates, when we join big organizations, we are self-motivated. We just need a guidance to work along. So, what would you suggest to like small entrepreneurs who have a like small family-run businesses, how to basically like bring a spark in their employees so that they work motivated and grow the business?
So, Rishi, I'm not sure it is to do with the size of business. It is more to do with the culture and the leaders there. Ironically, I was talking to a very senior person in Google about 10 years back, and they said that, we are losing very good people because Google is becoming big now. And these bright sparks, they really want to work in small places. They don't want to work in big places. Because the moment you get big places, you have rules, you have regulations, you have processes, etc. All those kind of things. And this is coming from Google, which is known to be very employee friendly and things like that. Okay, so Google faced this a lot of problem that they were losing a lot of their good talent to smaller entrepreneurs. So it is nothing to do with size. It is more to do with the leaders. There are a lot of large organizations where you will feel lost, that you will feel that you are just a cog in the wheel is in motion, etc. You just join in and do one small part of it. And many a times in small organizations, you get lost because there's no processes. You don't know how to go about doing it. But through your passion, you learn, you take up responsibility, and you look back and said, "Wow, I did so many things in the last 3 years, which my counterpart in large organization did not do." So it is nothing to do with large or small. It is more to do with what kind of an environment in which you are working. And even in large organizations, there are certain managers who give a lot of space to the people to think and come up with ideas and make things do. So they learn a lot, and that's a very good combination because they have seen how large organizations work, but they still have the flexibility to work like a small venture. So I have a client who started as a small entrepreneur. Big, they have offices in Sao Paulo, Dubai, and we were talking about culture, and the founder was telling that Sarthak, one thing I hate to lose is the entrepreneurial spirit, the spirit like a startup. So they have a value which talks about like a startup. That's the value, that irrespective of how big we do, we will always believe that we were born yesterday, and which means we have to take ownership, which means we have to be frugal, which means we will have to not get caught in processes, policies, but decide on spur of the moment, which means I will have to give a lot of accountability and empowerment to people. So that is how they want to create the organization. So size does impact, but more importantly, the leadership that drives this.
Thank you, sir.
One last question, maybe.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So you talked about the integrating work-life balance. So how is it a good idea to integrate that work and life, and why it is not good to keep the work and life balance separately?
The problem is it is not possible. It is not about whether it is right or wrong. It's very difficult. And I have experienced this, when I am at home and I'm doing some work, I want to just take a stretch. Like, you cannot keep working. I come out of the room. I at least have a separate room to work on. Everybody doesn't even have that luxury. I come out and my daughter is stuck with a maths problem. He says that, Baba, can you help me out with this? What do I tell my daughter? No, this is my work time. I will not help you. It's only after 6 p.m. You don't do that. You end up helping the child out with the maths problem, right? So those kind of things happen. One has to accept it and move work and uh, adhere to it and adapt to that kind of thing. Ideally, yes, if you can separate it out, it really matters well. But it is more and more, it is becoming difficult to compartmentalize these things, especially if you're working at home. If you want to really compartmentalize it, then you go out to a cafe, do your work there, or if you have the luxury of an office where you are allowed, you go to the office, do that work, come back. But when the office and work used to be there, people used to bring work home, and then the entire work-life balance come up. Whenever you compartmentalize, you have to balance. If you don't compartmentalize, you have to integrate. So whichever way you look at it, there is an issue. It's a question of what you want to address. So people create their own methods in this madness. For example, I always created for me, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. was no mobile period. I never checked my mobile, never checked my emails, etc. So this is a blackout period for me. There was a lady in my team, for her, 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. was she won't work. That's the time she had to feed her children, etc., put them to bed in the afternoon, etc., and then get back to them. You create your own rules within that kind of thing, but they will be integrated. It's very difficult to compartmentalize, and different people have different times. It also helps you. Like for me, it's 6 to 8 works. For her, 1:30 to 3:30 works. But if we were both in the office, for all of us, we had to be in the office till 6 p.m. Right? We didn't have a choice. So now we at least have a choice of choosing which is my time, personal time, which is my office time, and that can be done. And this is what integration is all about. So in my team, what I had done is there were some core working hours. We know everybody will be there during this core working, and we chose it, decided amongst ourselves together. So we said, okay, 10 to 1 will be core working hours, which means all meetings will happen between 10 to 1. And then again, people said, okay, from 4 to 6 is core working hours. So these were the core working hours. And then you adapt your times according to your own requirements based on, I'm a morning person, so I will start my day at 8 in the morning and I will close by 4 p.m. I am a late person, so I will go on till 8 in the evening, but I can't start before 10 in the morning. So you do adapt yourself to that. So there will always be certain rules, which is adaptive based on mutually agreed things, and then we decide on this. So it is, if you compartmentalize, you have to balance. If you integrate them, then you will have to have back and forth kind of thing. Okay? There is no easy answer, unfortunately.
Thank you, sir. It was kind of
Right?
elaborative answer.
Thank you.
Keeping the time constraint in mind, we should move on to formal vote of thanks. I would like to express gratitude to Sarthak sir on the behalf of DOMS IIT Roorkee. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful insights. The session was very inspirational for the budding managers here. Your insights about technology development, social changes, the democratization of resources, a globally connected workplace, work-life balance, and leadership qualities in the VUCA world are of great value to us. Thank you again, sir, for keeping the session interactive and answering our questions. I'm sure the students will remember these teachings and these learnings would help them lifelong. In your honor, we will continue the legacy of Avenir. For this year, we have decided to take the initiative to support children suffering from speech and hearing impairment and thus breaking the silence. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. Sir, we request you to stay back for a few minutes and please join the breakout session for a brief interaction with our class committee.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. It was a real pleasure. I love the interaction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.